If you're rebuilding an MP120 pump, disconnect the power and remove the pump from the machine and place it on a clean work surface. Heat recommends a layer of absorbent cloth, as there will be some oil and residue on the pump, and lubrication will be added at several steps later in the process. Remove the nut securing the impeller to the shaft. It should be 15/16 in diameter. Unthread the impeller from the assembly. Loosen the two Allen bolts that clamp the fan to the shaft. There may be a third smaller set screw in the keyway. Loosen the bolts holding the adapter frame to the motor. You may need a hammer to separate the frame from the motor. Next, remove the fan clamp from the shaft sleeve. There are 3 Allen head cap screws holding the seal housing in place in the assembly. Loosen and remove these. Once the cap screws are loose, remove the seal housing. There are also 2 carbon isolator bearings that will be replaced. The stationary seat must be removed from the seal housing. Use a screwdriver and a hammer to knock it out. It may be damaged in the process, but this item will be discarded anyway. The lip seal behind it must also be removed and discarded. Take time to clean all the parts, removing any buildup and residue. From the old shaft sleeve, remove the snap ring and place it on the new shaft sleeve. Place the new sleeve aside for now. Prepare the seal housing for the new lip seal and stationary seat. Lubricate the new lip seal with some anti-seize or some oil and place it into the housing. Set the lip seal into place using a socket extension and a hammer. Remove the stationary seal from its packaging and apply some oil. Carefully place the stationary seal into the housing and use the cardboard to press it against the seal face without damaging it. A press may be required to set this in place. Moving on to the carbon isolator bearings, place the O-ring and a gasket between the two, and also place a gasket between the isolators and the adapter frame. It may be helpful to have the adapter frame elevated in order to have enough room for the seal assembly to be inserted soon. Lubricate the seal assembly and press it onto the shaft sleeve. Carefully, place the seal and shaft assembly into the seal housing and press the shaft through the housing. Add another gasket and line up the seal housing onto the carbon isolators. Reattach the 3 bolts, making sure to tighten each bolt slowly and not all the way at once. Place the fan clamp back onto the shaft sleeve, and if your fan has a set screw, rotate the shaft so it can fit in the keyway. Don't tighten the other bolts on the fan just yet. Carefully place the whole assembly back onto the motor, making sure everything is aligned and seated. Rotate the assembly into the proper orientation and reinsert the frame bolts. You may want to be sure to start each of the threads by hand to ensure they don't become cross-threaded. Tighten them the rest of the way, applying even pressure around the connection. Turn the bearing and fan so you can access the Allen bolts to tighten the fan down. With the bolts accessible, rethread the impeller onto the shaft. Snug up the bolts, then push the impeller back into position to load the seal spring. Tighten the fan in place while holding the impeller in the spring-loaded position. Check that the impeller is tight, then reattach the locking nut to the impeller. The pump is now ready for reinstallation.
The trickiest parts are sometimes you have trouble getting the old one off, and sometimes you have trouble lining everything up. I've done it horizontal and vertical. Each way has its own difficulties of holding everything and getting it in, as you've seen when I was doing it. Sometimes the bearing seat, it's a little tricky to get in, and that's why I have this with the non-Mar surface, and I'll just tap it in.